Hey everybody, Brandon here. Welcome back to another episode of the King's Indian Attack Speedrun. There's a problem with the start of this recording, so it's starting just a little bit later, but I'll show the first few moves here. We have essentially a symmetrical King's Indian attack, which is really cool. And since they're not doing anything on this diagonal, that's interesting to note, but instead I'm just going to start with knight d2, and I'm going to see what they do here, if they play something like knight c6, or if they're going to go for some sort of e5. But now I think it's time to go e4, and I would really like to go for a kingside attack, because why not? I'm going to start with h3 to prevent any bishop g4. I want to make sure that that bishop doesn't get out. If they ever try anything, I can go king h2, so I'm not too worried. Let's just go king h2 now, in preparation of queen d7. I don't think this hurts us. So they go d5. Okay. And if they're going d5, this does open up my bishop and doesn't open up theirs. So I think I'm okay with that. I could also try waiting a move with queen e2, and the reason why I'm considering waiting a move is because if we do, then maybe they push d4 and then we can go for a further kingside attack. If they go knight b4, then we can always just move our knight on d2 to somewhere like b3. We could also consider c3 here. The thing is, I really want to go for kingside attacks because we haven't really had as many of them in this series yet. So I think something like c3 is what I want to do here. If they end up taking, that's okay. I want to see them push. Generally, we haven't seen any pushing lately. If we do, I'll play c4, keep things closed, and I'll go knight e1 or knight g1 and f4. So again, we're unfortunately not seeing a position where our opponents are trying to close the center and get a big center essentially, and because of that we have to play a different way. I like putting the queen on e2 or c2. Here I'm going to prefer it on e2 just because they played this knight h5. Looks like they're trying to play on the king side, so I want to play on the king side. That's kind of the idea here. Never play g4 and giving up that f4 square unless there's a very good reason to. I think it was a game or two ago where that actually was a good reason. I would love to get rid of one pair of minor pieces because I don't really need to defend e4 too much because I want something to go to e3. So I would be happy trading off these two bishops or these two knights because then my other piece goes to e3 and I feel like everything's extremely well defended. I could also start with knight c4. I think it's incorrect to take. And if they don't take, then I could just be going to e3 with my knight. The bishop can stay on c1 for a little bit longer, but it does feel right to bring the knight here. I just have to be worried of some sort of f5, f4 hitting the knight. I don't think I'm too concerned about that though, because f5 is just, it's way too weakening, I think. In this position, where there's like central lines opened, generally you don't want to open up your king willy-nilly. And that's kind of the idea here, is we're not going to go for f4 in these types of positions unless we're just winning something for it. But here I feel extremely happy. We definitely have a great position already. We have the bishop pair, and even though it's technically a closed position, we can consider it to be closed because, well, when we look at the pawns on the board, whenever there's generally 6 or more pawns, I believe, you consider a position to be closed. Here I would consider this to still be open because one of the central lines is opened, which I think is the more important factor here. I'm trying to see if they go knight f6 or bishop f6. I think both I'm not upset about taking. Or sorry, knight f6 I'm not going to take, but if they went bishop f6, I'm not upset about taking. Here I think this is a very interesting move. Sometimes it can actually be very strong. And the idea behind it is that e6 or e5 might sometimes be difficult to attack. Here, I don't think that's the case. I think they do, or I will have an avenue to attack these pieces. I'll start with rook a d1, but I can bring my bishop to e3 and play something like knight g5 to target this e6 pawn, and I think they're going to run into some troubles. So yeah, I also have ideas of h4 and bishop h3. Not immediately, my knight is hanging, I gotta watch out for that. I'm extremely happy if they end up taking, so I will just go h4 here. I think this is a very strong move, because it's just gaining more space in a position where all of our pieces are doing a great job. I don't really want to take and give them the open file. If they want to take mine, that's okay, because then I recapture, they can challenge it again, but that's a different scenario. I gotta watch out for this move. That was a really good move from them, because this pawn is actually hanging, yeah? And if I go knight g1, then they can go knight g4. I maybe have bishop h3 here, though. If they take on e4, I take on e6 with check. And who does that benefit? I feel like that benefits me. I have to watch out because knight g4 is such a big problem. And I have to go into this, I think. So that's okay. If I have to go into it, then I have to go into it. I should have been a little bit more cautious here. Maybe h4 wasn't correct. Maybe something like knight g1 to go to e2 is actually just better there. But bishop h3 looks okay. Knight takes e4. I can take with check, and then I just have to move my knight. Something like knight g1 I think is extremely appropriate here. Yeah, that looks correct. Is there anything else to worry about? Not really. Okay, so they end up taking on d1. That's actually very interesting. Their argument is that f2 will be hanging at the end. Oh, they don't even deal with it. Okay. Now this makes things a lot easier for me. I can move my knight. And I can move my pawn to f3 if I really need to. It looks weird to play something like f3, but I don't see how it could be hurting me actually here. After f3, there's no knight g4. E4 is defended. f3 is extremely hard to attack. g3 is the only thing that becomes a little bit weaker because of it, and f3, I guess. But neither can be attacked because I can just bring my king to, say, like g2. If queens are on the board, I probably wouldn't play a move like this. But this is a much less important scenario, I think. So I'm just going to take this pawn. This is a free pawn. And I will just go bishop to b3. And I'm ready to move my knight, say to f1. Now that my rook is defended. So yeah, knight to f1 looks good here. If we end up trading rooks, then this just benefits me. I'm up a pawn, so generally trades will be good for me. So they end up playing that first. That's okay. I'll take here. And I will go... Do I want to go bishop d5? I think c6 might lose my bishop, so I got to be a little bit careful about that. I'll just play bishop c2. I'm looking at bishop d3. Then I have to worry about c6. I guess c6 isn't something I worry about, it's just something that happens. And if they have to play a move like c6 and kind of be stuck here for a little bit, I can always try to reroute my knight to d2. How is this possible? Here, 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 and then, or sorry, to b4. And I just found a route. It takes a little while, but hey. Okay, that's a good answer to it. Now I should probably play b4 to watch out for any tricks there. Do I take? If I take and then knight takes, that might help them a little bit. Though I'm not actually sure. I do have moves like c4 coming after that. Let's take and go bishop b2, and I'm looking at moves like c4. Yeah. c4 will put them in a really awkward spot. I'm happy to take. That's not a big deal for me. c4. They could try some sort of g4 stuff. I don't know if I care. My goal is to just make too much play on the queen side. And force them to react to it. So if they go g4, I can just take on b5, for example. And then their queen side just immediately falls, actually. Because they can take... I'll take with the knight, actually, to maintain contact with the b5 pawn. So if they end up recapturing, I can just recapture. They can take on e4 or whatever. It just doesn't matter to me. Because I'll end up taking on e5. Here, I think this is really strong. Now I'm threatening to take on e5. They can go g4. I'm just going to take on e5, and if they take on f3, I'll just recapture, and c6 is actually undefended still, so they have to deal with that. Yeah, so this feels like it's is actually winning at this point. We have some work to do, though. Definitely have some work to do. I would love to play this. Bishop d1. Maybe knight e3 is a bit safer. Something I have to watch out for is if they can ever get like knight d3 in at a correct point. That could be worrying for me. So instead, I'm just trying to make natural moves. Knight g4 could be coming soon. Bishop c4 also looks very good. Just improving the pieces. Yeah, let's go bishop c4. I don't think this hurts. If they... Okay. I can just ignore this, I believe. And go king f1. Should I go king f1 or king f2? If I go king f2, they take, I take, and then knight d3 check. I have king e2 because they can't take yet. But I'm just always considering, like, do they have g4 or are they going to try g4? I don't think it's possible yet. So I'm just going to go here. Okay, so I think this benefits us because now there's less imbalances in the position. There's no longer a difference in minority pieces or minor pieces. So a big plan I have is, for example, king e3 and actually maybe just pushing and trading off all those pawns. Because I think if that happens, then we can treat it like a king and pawn ending just with knights on the board. So I do have a little bit less time than them. I should be a little careful here. King e3. The good thing is they can't really get in, right? This is covered, this is covered. So they have to go a long way around to ever try getting in. Even there, they have to go here and then here. So it's going to take them a lot of moves, and by the time they do something like that, f4 is going to hit them. I always want to be aware of a move like g4, because one idea I have that I do like is just bringing my king to b4 and winning the a-pawn. And this is very possible. Like, it's definitely able to happen. Okay, so they just move away instead. Not sure what the idea is. It's kind of encouraging me to want to just go king d2. If they go knight f6, they might be looking at g4. I could play g4 myself. Again, the biggest issue with something like g4, if I play it, is that this pawn is my extra pawn and it doesn't really mean much there. What about king c3? Maybe it's time for king c3 and b3. I play b3 instead to create a pass pawn. So I'm not trying to win the pawn, I'm just trying to create a pass pawn. Or I could go knight e3 here, which is a new addition to the position. Anyways, Yeah, now knight d5 check is annoying. Plus king c4 is also really annoying because I have king b5 as an idea here. Yeah, I think this is the way to win now. There's not really a way to stop me now, which is great. I guess I'll take this pawn, and then I'll just move up. And do I play knight d5, knight c4? Let's just take the pawn. Oh, that's their idea. Let's go b3. Their idea was if I took the pawn, then knight a4 check would win b2. So I want to prevent that. Now it's time to start pushing a little bit. And we got to reroute. We got to do something here. I could have gone king c6, actually. I'll go a5 and then king c6. Oh, knight b6 makes things a lot easier now. I'll take with the king, doesn't hurt. They might try some stalemate or some tricks with c4 or g4. If I play too quickly and miss that and don't take it, then, you know, I could easily mess up. But that's why I'm just going to stop any of those tricks, and then I can just kind of pre-move the rest here and not really worry. That's fine. They can take all the pawns they want. Let's go queen g4. And then bring the queen down. Oh, oops. Bam. There we go. Checkmate. Yeah, that was a really interesting game. So let's definitely cover that in analysis. There's a few things that I want to discuss here. And mainly they have to do with... Actually, even this position is kind of interesting here. I'm just hoping for the day that we see some sort of d4. I'm not really too keen on taking. I'm sure this is totally fine, though. Just because the reason why I'm not really keen on doing it is because, well, yeah, we kind of rely on getting d4 in. Or even taking d5. Like, if we can do that, then I'm sure we're just going to be equal or better in those cases. But there's also another interesting option, which is c4. And then things just stay extremely closed. And that's exactly what we want here. We want to play things like, let's just say, they go b4. We go like knight b3. I'm sure looks fine here, honestly. Just to protect everything, and we have a3 coming next. They go c5. We can consider something like a3. I don't think that hurts us. Knight g1. And yeah, we're going for f4 here. And even if they try to stop it, I think f4 is still a strong move. So that's kind of the point of this, and I think that could lead to some really fun play. f5's coming. Maybe some sort of like knight maneuver to the king's side, but generally you get your normal King's Indian play here. And if they were to ignore it, f5 would come, and that would really hurt. So if they played something weird like king h8, f5 might just kill them on the spot. But I'm not really too sure on the specifics here. We'd have to definitely calculate that out if it were to happen in a game. Unfortunately, my invitation to go into those positions was not taken. I think this is a probably a better approach for our opponents to take, actually, is just to take on e4. I think this is their best chance at equalizing in the position. But I think we're extremely comfortable here. So is black, but I think we're just slightly happier. And I feel like that was kind of highlighted in the game, as well as they didn't really seem to be too familiar with the plans and everything here. So yeah, again, h6, rook 81. h4 is a natural move, and I don't hate it. I think luckily we're fine after this variation here. I was actually considering, what if after they took and then took on e4, their idea was here that if I were to move my knight, then they can take on f2. So I'd have to play king g2 here. And I think like, oh, okay, maybe they're trying to get something here. But they didn't go for this anyways. It kind of makes sense to go for it because they trade off one of their double pawns for something, for one of my healthiest pawns. These pawns aren't super happy just because they're doubled and isolated, so they're definitely a target. But this pawn's not really, you know, doing too bad. It's not the best pawn in the world. I'd say arguably the most important pawn in my position is c3, just because it restricts this knight entirely, and just because of that, I think, yeah, if there's any pawn that I would rather trade, it's this pawn for this pawn rather than like this pawn for like this pawn. That would be a worst case scenario where, you know, then they can start looking at moves like knight d4 and trying to actually equalize the position a little bit easier. But I think that's going to cover it for this game. Everything else was pretty standard. They definitely put up a good fight here, but yeah, we got into the night ending and just brought our king in, and the extra pawn was just enough to win the game. So that's kind of it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next game for the run. Bye bye.